Okay, so let's go on and start talking about what it means to work with the press. Let's do first a quick reflection and think about what is the benefit of using the media in your own experience that you've had with the media, whether it's a lot of experience or not, or even the experience of writing press releases. What have you felt is the benefit of using media in your experience, or from what you know, from what you've seen in other people and in other groups?
Well, for me, so the benefit of using media is to make sure that information is getting to a wider audience. So, for example, different types of media, of course, will have different audiences. So the newspaper, in Trinidad and Tobago is probably the most broadly consumed media. And then, of course, there's social media too. So, to get yourself in front of an audience, that's where you have to use the media.
For
Yeah, that
me, I
is
would say,
one benefit, getting
okay.
in front of an audience. Sorry, go ahead.
So for me, I would say, media is kind of an advocacy tool, to actually campaign on what is it that you're advocating for. You can use it by media because, they have a lot of persons who are very connected with the newspapers. You can do it by different means of media, but I would say, for me, I would see it as an advocacy tool.
Yes, definitely. Getting the word out there and using the media to convince people is something very important that we can get out of it.
Yeah, those are actually my points. Um, in terms of being able to spread it across wider platforms, and use the different mediums. And Okechino would have mentioned newspapers because in Trinidad that's really the predominant source that we have here. But again, we also have sources such as social media and other forms that people would utilize to amplify messages, to share information, and to spread advocacy to different groups. So yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. So, media right now and in this modern world can mean a lot of things. For example, social media, and that is a very useful tool to get our message out there, similar as in we do in traditional media. But working in the social media is very different than what it working with the traditional media looks like. So today we're going to be focusing on what it means to be reaching out to written press, radio, and TV. And for us to be able to work with this media, we first need to know what turns a story into news. So, a story can be any story that we tell, but news means, remember the word, the connection, news and new. So a story turns into news when it is something new. It's something that is happening now. It's not an old story. Unless you're talking to a reporter that focuses on things that happened in the past, and these people are mostly like working on historical stuff, then your story might not be considered news for them. Your story should also be something that happens at a local level. And if it's not something that is happening at the local level, you can connect it and think how that problem impacts your region or your city. For example, um, a few years ago, and this is not the case anymore because climate change impacts are here in our region already. But a decade ago, um, when we talked about climate change, a lot of people would not relate to that because it would be like, oh, that is something happening at the poles, the ice is melting, like what does that have to do with me? But the way that the topic was connected to our Caribbean region was talking about sea level rise and hurricanes and mosquitoes and all those things that connect to our local level. Unfortunately, a lot has happened in the past decades, and we are experiencing a lot of the climate crisis effects now. But think about that example when you're thinking of how to connect something if it happens somewhere else to your local level. A story should also have a human face and tell the people the story of the people that are affected by this problem, not just leave it in an abstract form, but talk directly about who is affected and how they look like and what their daily lives look like. It should have a conflict. Traditional media loves this drama, so you need to be able to describe who are the good guys and who are the villains in your story. If you have any controversy, if there's something shocking, that will be great. They will love this. Um, and you should always be able to say who helps you, who supports you, no matter how unusual, because that helps people who are reading you stay even more connected to you. Like if you are a climate group, but you have a religious group supporting you, or a political party, or a certain social organization, or a company, or whatever, talk about them, because that helps people connect more, because the people that might not connect to the topic of climate might connect to that religious group or to that company or whatever. You should also have visuals, and it has to be relevant. If it's not related to what's happening in the present or something that's going to happen very soon, then it is not attractive news to them. Um, and as you're thinking about how to turn your story into news, you should think about what are the elements of a good message. So it should be a special message that includes that is within the topic that the person interviewing you works on. So reporters tend to specialize in different disciplines. There's economics, there's sports, there's environmental, there's global, all those things. So it's good to reach out to the people that focus on these topics, because there's more chance that they will want to talk about this story that you are telling. It should also be concise. Time is always limited when we are approaching traditional media, especially on radio and TV. Time practically flies by. You blink and time is over. So you need to write and practice the most important elements of your news. You have to be ready and know the who, when, how, where, why, and be able to say that easily, so you can be concise and get the main message that you want to get out there. You can also practice how to be flexible. A good message includes this flexibility of where you're prepared to be able to say your message no matter the questions that they throw at you or they add to it. For example, I've been to interviews where they call me to talk about water and drought, for example, because I'm a hydrologist, so I get called a lot to talk about that when there's drought in my country. But then they start talking about everything like plastic pollution and the beaches and turtles and everything, and I want to stay on topic for the thing I was asked to talk about, which is water and drought. So it's taken some practice for me to be able to prepare to connect all these things they throw at me to the main thing I want to talk about, which is water. And that this is something very common. So in your case, you can think about what is it that you're talking. So in your case, it would be protecting sex workers, it would be protecting workers, it would be climate adaptation initiatives in your community. So think about that and take a few minutes to think of all these questions they throw at you to like either on purpose distract you or accidentally because people are not always super aware of how these things might or might not be connected. So these questions might be on purpose or they might not be. So you need to be flexible, think about what they could potentially use that could be distracting, and come back to practice the who, when, how, where, why, and connect it to your message. You should also be well organized, have the information at hand, and make it easy to understand, and make it also easy for you to be accessible so that they can get your data and photos quickly without much effort. These reporters are usually very busy, they're on tight timelines. So if you reach out first and already send something in writing and your picture and your bio and all that, it will be much easier for them. And there's a higher chance that they will publish your story, because if they get too much extra work and they kind of forgot to write to you about asking for your photos, and then a week went by and the topic was old anymore, then you're not getting published because they needed to move on to other things. And when it comes to working with the reporters, here's some things we need to keep in mind. First, we need to assume they don't know your topic. They might be an expert on it or they might have never heard of it. So we need to assume they don't know your topic and we need to explain from scratch. They are very friendly, but they are not your friends. So don't say anything that you don't want to have gotten out there in public. They have a deadline and they have little time, so they need our support to be able to give them what they need so that they can publish our story. They work on several stories at the same time, so this adds to the stress and the time constraint. They are also looking to sell and they need a good story with the elements that I mentioned a couple of minutes ago. Also, don't lie, it can go very wrong. Sometimes they don't follow up, they don't research, sometimes they do. And if you're lying, it can go very wrong for you. It can go into like the public with proof that you were lying. So don't lie. Follow up with them at the day after the interview, or that afternoon. If you interviewed in the morning, you can send a message as if they need any extra information. Be willing to support them with that. Speak to them professionally, help them do their job by following up, by sending pictures, by sending links to anything. Um, and don't say anything that you don't want someone to find out, and stay on message. Try and practice it over and over. So, speaking about staying on message, if you had 30 seconds to explain your campaign, what would you say? So, we are going to take 3 minutes to work on this. And then we will come back. I will have a timer on, and you are gonna explain your campaign in 30 seconds. And we're gonna do our best to avoid the timer. Okay, so uh, get a pen and paper or your phone or whatever works best for you to take notes. And we're gonna take a short pause so you can work on this. Let's say 3 minutes. Let's come back at, it's 10:22. Let's come back at 10:25 to explain our campaign. Any questions so far? Let's come to the sharing part. I am gonna set my timer, and I'm gonna stay off mute so that you can hear the timer run. And I wish I had prizes. But we'll have a warm round of applause for everyone. Okay, so Katrina, do you want to go first?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so
So
be
ignore the baby in the
ready.
background, that's all.
Be ready. I'm gonna say 3, 2, 1 now, and then I will hit the timer. And
Great.
same as well for you, Denise and Princess. Okay, so 3, 2, and 1 now.
Hi there, my name is Katrina Khan Roberts, and I represent the Trinidad and Tobago Climate Network. We are focused on adaptation and climate solutions and bringing together all walks of life that are interested in the climate crisis. Our main goal is to make sure that decision makers make the best scientific based decisions going forward for a better future for all. Thank you.
Perfect. And the timer will make noise.
Wow, okay, so that was 30 seconds. I spoke too fast then.
An applause for you. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. My feedback, I think you did great with time. I would look into how to add like a next step or something like an invitation to an event or a meeting or a petition or something that can give an action point to how
Yes,
you're working.
definitely. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Denise, do you want to go next?
Sure.
Okay, great. 3, 2, 1, and now.
My name is Denise Carr, and I'm representing SUCOS. SUCOS is a sex worker-led organization where we advocate for the rights of sex workers, and we located in Palm Harbor, Suriname. Today's campaign, that what we're trying to put out, it's for the challenges of sex workers, the challenging sex workers are facing in society. We want to reach into all 10 districts, so all sex workers, please come on board. You can contact us at our office or our phone number to share your experience.
Great, and just 5 seconds. So you did this in 35 seconds. Perfect. Applause. Great. And I really like that you added the call to action and at the end the call to join. My feedback, and I know this might be limited with time, but you can continue practice. As you mentioned, the challenges that they're facing, you can add like 2 words to like an example of the challenges. That could be something, but you can continue working on that with practice. I know this is not easy, but you will all get there perfectly soon. Okay, Princess, are you ready?
No, but okay.
Okay, I will say 3, 2, 1 now.
Hi, my name is Princess Avian Charles, the project lead for the Redefining Work series with Caribbean Feminists. This is a campaign that works to address the prevalence and impacts of occupational climate hazards to workers in Trinidad and Tobago. We do this through providing education, training, and policy recommendations to mitigate occupational climate risks for workers. To learn more, please join us on all Caribbean feminist platforms.
Perfect. Wait 1 second to go. Great. Applause. Wonderful. Um, I think you did great with time and a similar feedback as I mentioned, Denise. You can like grab a 2 3 words to like mention something about the hazards that workers are facing because of the climate crisis. Just like as a brief example, and of course, adding a few words here might mean that you have to remove some other words there. But that is part of the process. And as you continue to write it and practice and develop it, you will realize what works best for you. Only you know your campaign best. There's no one in the world as experts on your campaigns as you are. So you will be able to play with this and do trial and error until you say like, yes, this is my 30-second pitch. This is perfect. But so far you did amazing jobs. I've been in trainings where people like the 30-second timer makes noise and they're talking for another 2 minutes. So you are all perfect, wonderful. A big applause for you. Okay, so let's come back to a couple of case studies, examples. um, so let's imagine that you are working on a campaign related to renewable energy. And as you're talking about your renewable energy project to a reporter, the reporter, sorry about the typo, I just realizing it now. The reporter starts to ask about plastic waste in the streets. How would you switch back to your topic if you were explaining to it? What would you say if they ask, so what do you think about all this plastic waste we have in the streets that is very bad to the environment? Princess. Katrina, anyone. You need to think fast, whatever comes to mind.
I was still thinking.
Imagine this is live TV. How would you switch back? Denise, any thoughts?
So I'm still thinking.
Hi. So yeah, basically how if they're talking about renewable energy, right? And they start to talk about plastic waste, we'll say, well, there are many different issues affecting our environment, but the biggest thing that we can possibly do to protect our environment right now is to find more sustainable sources of energy. And just go on from there.
Yes, excellent. So, yes, go back, acknowledge what they say, because if you don't, then they will be like, but do you agree that are you okay with the planet being dirty? Blah, blah, blah. So I agree with what they say, but switch back and connect. That is an excellent connection, Katrina. Okay, let's think. Um, uh, okay, yeah, let's do this exercise. So you lead a group that works on climate adaptation policy, so that you're working with a team to maybe push your government to adopt certain climate adaptation measures like reforestation or cooling centers or mangrove planting or housing, anything that can fit under climate adaptation policy. And a reporter invites you to interview you about heat waves. What would you say in this interview space to make sure that you connect the interview to your work, so that you're not only talking about heat waves and what causes it, but so that you can let people know and make sure they remember that you're working on climate adaptation policy? Any thoughts, any at all, any ideas on what would you say if they ask, but what are the causes of these heat waves? No ideas? I know this one could be a bit harder than the previous question.
Hi, so basically, how we go about doing this, yes, you have to explain what a heat wave is, just to make sure that you acknowledge that, yes, heat waves are an issue that are possibly connected to climate. And then, of course, you can talk about the solutions as they are with your work. So, for example, like you said, the mangrove replanting, that is a way to reduce heat waves because you're increasing the amount of green surface area, which in turn reduces the instance of heat waves. So you acknowledge and you move forward with solutions that are aligned with what you do with your work.
Exactly, yes. And a great chance to talk about this if they invite you to talk about heat waves, you can say how these heat waves are affecting people and how this climate adaptation policy that you're proposing, that you are working on, will actually help people survive heat waves and be safer. So that's how you can connect the topic. Um, let's see, there's no other examples, but let's do one more example. Let me take. Let's suppose that you are let's go similar to this. Let's suppose you're working on a campaign related to renewable energy. You want to install solar panels on a community center where people can have air conditioner and energy and just like access to internet and all that in moments of emergency. And a reporter is talking to you about this work that you're doing, and then they ask, um, I like, but what about uh, the animals in this community? Aren't you working to protect these animals?
Anybody else? Nobody else has an idea?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. My brain is blank today. But let me let me see if I can try. So the point was that we're having a campaign related to renewable energy again, but it's the interviewer asked a question concerning animals. I guess if we are also concerned about the impact on animals or something of that sort. Just correct me if I'm wrong.
Just like it doesn't need to make sense. Like you're working about that and they just ask you, but aren't you working to protect the animals here in this area?
Okay, well, let me think quick. Okay, yes. So in that regard, I would acknowledge that with the work that we are doing, we do account for the impacts on not just human life, but also the safety and security and well-being of animals as well, and all species. So through the renewable energy campaign that we have, with providing facilities and providing facilities that would lead to a more just transition and renewable sources of energy. We also are protecting the animal species in the process or something of that sort, somewhere around there.
Yes, this is great. And remember, it doesn't need to make sense. Sometimes they just throw these questions at you, whether it's on purpose or accidentally being confusing. But the topic of climate and environment is sometimes super mixed together. It's confused by a lot of people, and they can throw questions at you that don't make sense, that don't connect, but you can just say, like, yes, this campaign is about renewable energy because the transition will help humans and all species as well. But if you're interested in connecting to someone working with animals, we are partners with this other group, whatever this I don't know, wildlife refuge or whatever. That is just an example. But this is just like a brief example of all the possible things that could happen. My first ever experience with the press was like this. I was just like 16, something like that, and I was organizing a beach cleanup, and they called me to talk on the radio, and I was super excited. Wow, it's my first time talking in the press. And then the reporter starts like in an angry tone saying, but why are you wasting your time in the beach? You should be where the river starts, talking to people about why like throwing trash in the river is a problem. Don't you care about the river too? And I was like frozen. Like I was 16. This was my first ever interview. um but what I answered at the time was that it was for a marine protection week. And I said something about it, like the purpose of us going to the beach. It was because it was a series of events related to the coast. uh but like the it's true that the river is a source of trash for the beach, but it wasn't the point of that event. Now, with other years of experience, I would answer very differently. Because obviously, like at that time, it was like me, a 116-year-old with zero resources. I couldn't even drive to where the river started to talk to the people at the each house about this. So my answer would be very different now, but I think I did a good job at that time. But it was shocking to me, and these examples are just something that could happen. Obviously it doesn't always happen like this, but it could happen, so we need to keep our minds, our hearts open to any possibility. And just to close off, start closing off this training, here are just some general tips that will make it easier for you to work, do your work with the press for your campaign, your organization. It is useful to maintain a database of email and phone numbers and social networks of reporters from newspapers, radio, and TV in your area. Keep it in a spreadsheet, keeping it a Word document, make a copy of it and a second copy. So you make sure that you don't lose it. Um, that way you can just get the emails and their contacts easy when you have a press release or an event that you want to invite press to. Practice staying on topic, like the exercise that we just did. Um, and use the media to announce what is most important. If you're also contacting media for every single meeting, every single event you have, they might get annoyed and just ignore you. So use the media to announce what is most important. Also, a good tip is do not send communications between Friday and Sunday. And most of these people work Monday through Friday, and for the weekends, they have people that just report the top things, the emergency, the breaking news stuff. But the weekend team is much smaller and is not dedicated to doing like the interview and the investigation and all that. So do not send communications Friday between Sunday. If you also send them on Friday, it will get lost in all the emails they get over the weekend. And when they come back on Monday, they will not see it. So ideally, if something happened on the weekend, send it Sunday late night or Monday very early morning. So it's one of the first things they see on their email. Also send communications in the morning so that they have time during the day to read and it doesn't get lost in the inbox until the next day. Another option you can do is send letter to the editor to if you want to like publish an opinion that you have, and you can find online a lot of samples on how to write your own letter to the editor. Um, and also pay attention to your socials and emails after a press article. I've seen this happen too much where a group is published on the press, they have their story published, but then they don't check their social media. And usually, after your story is published, especially on large networks, other media reach out to contact you about it and do another interview. And if you don't reply quickly, then again your story won't be news anymore. It will be an old story, so people will move on. So pay attention to your socials and emails after a press article in case someone wants to interview you again, or also if someone just hears about you and wants to be part of your group, it's a good idea to contact them quickly for volunteer retaining. And also write only what is most important. A press release should be a page, 2 pages at most, like for just very specific occasions, but ideally just 1 page, write what is most important. And I know that you are writing press releases for your events upcoming this month and for other activities. So at any time, feel free to contact us and we can offer tips, be a second pair of eyes, and support you in writing your press release. And I'm gonna send these slides later on so you can keep this, but these are just a few tips about your press release, how to make it more effective. You should start at the top saying whether it's for immediate release, for urgent communication, or just a press release if it's nothing urgent. The first paragraph should include the who, when, how, where, why. because that's the first thing that they're gonna read. If the first paragraph is boring and doesn't say much, then they won't be interested. They probably won't read the rest of the thing. And the next paragraph should be explanatory. So like what is the problem? What is expected to be resolved? And if you have the good guys and bad guys to the story, add it there. Um, then the next paragraph should be a brief presentation about like who the organizer is, like who your group is. Like the Caribbean Climate Network is a group of people from all over the region that focus on climate adaptation and are part of G50.org, a global organization that fights the climate crisis. That is your presentation paragraph. And then conclusion, highlight in one sentence that most important thing that you want to say. And if you have an event or something or a page on Facebook or an email, add it there. And end with contact information and this number signs, because those are the ones that determine that the communication ended. So that's it in general for how a press release looks like. So save these tips. And this is a lot of information, I know, but whenever you are planning to reach out to the media, feel free to review the slides again and think of like things that you can do differently this time, things that you want to add to this release that you haven't added to previous ones. And just save it and feel free to share the slides with your teams as well, so that other members of your team can use it.